curator?
No, it's fine. It's perfect. It's no problem. I just didn't understand.
Bueno, buenos
Like one
días.
of these.
Bueno, hoy es un encuentro informal. Bueno, voy a hablar en castellano porque me da vergüenza hablar en inglés tan públicamente. I say this for me a little unshy when I speak in public English. Pero bueno, esto es un encuentro informal con Roger, que el proyecto lo conocí el año 2012 cuando vino a Chile y después de 5 años logramos tener una exposición en Matucana 100 que ha sido muy visitada, estamos muy contentos y la idea era generar distintos encuentros con distintas instancias de personas, ¿sí que tú con distintas personas, como, no sé, ayer hicimos una comida muy informal, hoy día tenemos un encuentro con artistas, después tenemos un encuentro con coleccionistas, después va a haber un taller, hoy día en la noche hay un conversatorio público. Entonces, como para que distintas personas puedan conocer a Roger y también gente que le interese, como los curadores o galerías o coleccionistas, puedan tener un acercamiento con él sin tener que tener una intervención mía. Así que yo creo que le vamos a dejar la palabra a Roger. ¿Y todos hablan inglés? Sí.
No, hay que
traducir. Bueno, ahí no hablan ustedes, no hablan. Yeah, okay, we translate.
Sí, yo te ayudo.
Okay, yeah. So, then welcome, Roger, and we're happy that you're here.
Well, it's great to be here, and we met, I guess, 5-6 years ago, just for a half a day. So it was just sort of a chance meeting in some ways. And, it's very nice when something by chance actually manifests itself. So sometimes you go down a straight road and you fall off the cliff, as they say in English. And sometimes you just go this way and it leads to a beautiful view. So I was very pleased that this worked out, and thank you very much for keeping the faith, as they say in English.
Sí, o sea.
Que dice que muchas gracias, que le encanta estar acá.
He's a little hungry. He's
Encontrarse con Montse, me imagino, y el encuentro que hubo, que sin imaginárselo, o sin que fuera una cosa muy planeada, se produjo y eso me encanta, como hay un dicho en inglés ¿cómo es?
Que a veces cuando uno toma el camino se cae.
Claro, que a veces el camino derecho no te lleva forzosamente a la meta, entonces ahora como que se produjo una cosa muy fluida, un poco por buena onda, no tanto por planificación, y finalmente llegan a concretar.
También pueden preguntarle algo a Roger.
Has everybody been to the exhibition?
Fue a ver la
Except me, I haven't been.
We're going on.
We go probably this afternoon. So,
Sería, maybe explain a little bit about this curatorship, como de la curatoría, cómo fue como el proceso de curatoría.
How was the curator work with you after?
So, how was the process of getting this particular selection of curators?
well,
Working with Montserrat, long distance. I mean.
Sometimes it's more difficult,
but look, the biggest problem people face now when they make shows of mine is I've been doing this photography nearly 50 years now. So I really have a lot of photographs and gone through a lot of different periods. And there's published books and there's a lot of unpublished pictures. So I think that the first problem that people face is, what do they want to show of me? Do they want to show the pictures of the animals I did, or they want to show a retrospective, or do they want to show something about how I got involved with drawing? Or what I did with the people, or is it more culturally defined what they want to do? So I think this is always the the first big issue is, you know, what's the purpose of the exhibition? So we discussed this for some time, and we thought, well, there should be a lot of animals, for example, in the photographs, because a lot of my work for the last 15 years contains animals, whether it's drawings or whether it's physical animals like birds or dogs or cats in the picture. So that was something we thought would be interesting. And then there's always the trade-off between, in these exhibitions, between so-called iconic pictures, where, you know, the pictures that I became famous for, and more unknown pictures, on pictures that people haven't seen before. And there's always a trade-off between trying to, you know, balance this issue, because, you know, if you're just going to show iconic pictures, well, it's not such a challenge for the curator. You're just picking pictures that are well known. So that's something else. And then we thought about a few ideas, which some manifested itself and some didn't. Firstly, we agreed that we should have a few videos, because a video, I'm doing videos now with all my projects. A video is a parallel aesthetic. So if you do a video with photography, it should enlarge my aesthetic, because a video can do certain things that the photos can't do, and my videos are art videos. So if you just do a documentary video, then it might not expand in the same way that an art video would. So we tried to decide which videos to show, and how many are we showing? They're showing the three. Okay. Sorry.
Yo le pregunté cómo había sido el proceso de curatoría de la exposición que está acá y cómo había sido la relación.
Claro, entonces él habla de cómo se eligieron las fotos, que él tiene muchas imágenes, son 50 años de fotos. Si hubiera elegido solo las imágenes icónicas de su trabajo, no hay como mucho interés por el curador. Entonces como que decidió, entre los dos me imagino, escoger las imágenes que fueran como más representativas de un total, y habla de los videos también, que se escogieron 3 videos, que son video arte, nada documental sino video arte, y que ahí también hay cosas que representan cosas que quiere decir que la foto no le alcanza a dar lenguaje.
Que mientras el video va a ser importante.
Claro, claro.
I can explain some. Bueno, algunas decisiones también tenían que ver con el barrio, con Matucana, ¿no? O sea, Matucana is a place with a lot of different people, are migrants, o sea, hay mucha gente diferente en Matucana, inmigrantes, los perros. Tenemos un sector que además está lleno de museos, y entonces como que tenía mucho que ver con el trabajo de Roger también, porque él habla mucho en sus trabajos de la gente con la que trabaja también son inmigrantes o son personas que están como fuera de un circuito. Y después hicimos un especial de La Habana de Antwerp, justamente porque me interesaba generar un público diverso, o sea, un público que pudiese llegar porque era el director de su banda favorita, y así también había gente que llegó porque sabían que él había trabajado con teatro, entonces hace un trabajo performático, y al final creo que se logró un poco tener un público muy diverso, que no solamente era de fotografía, sino de artistas, diseñadores, gente del mundo del teatro, de cine, y gente muy joven también. So I explained that.
Yo traje a mi sobrino de 13 años,
She go with
y le dije ayer que le iba a ir a encontrar al fotógrafo, y me dice, dile que es un bacán.
Her nephew went with her to the exhibition, 13-year-old, and said, "You are awesome." He was really.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, he saw the videos.
We used
everything, and he was
the word bacán too.
A lot of people like your work, and
Shut this off.
eso fue como un poco la idea general, y obviamente el hecho de que haya trabajado como desde la fotografía con el mundo del arte y que tenga una posición de fotografía de un documentalista, me pareció que apostaba un poco en esa discusión. Y bueno, del 2012 hoy día
Yeah.
estuvo cada vez
Yes,
más famoso, entonces,
it's
hasta el día de la
a
inauguración.
royalty, and I'm just busy right now, so you can convert it for royalty.
Sí, lo podríamos preguntar ahora por qué trabaja tanto con
It's
los-
just for
Y
royalty.
si la gente,
Royalty for.
si la gente sigue viviendo ahí, o esa gente...
And how much it? Yeah. And what? And how much is it?
Sí, que-
No solo
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
sí,
That's
mix,
fine.
hicimos
Pero los animales tienen...
That's fine.
Los pájaros
Yes.
tienen un tema central
Yes.
en esa posición. Algo, en el video algo lo explica ya.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Am I-
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. I'm sorry.
No, es okay.
Look, what's interesting to me about my work, and I always use a simple example. Many times I go through the security in South Africa. But for many years I had a metal box. I put the pictures in a metal box. So when I went underneath the security, they couldn't see the pictures. They didn't know it was there. So the staff at the airport, then they would make me open the box. And then when they saw these pictures, they got so excited. And they would say, these pictures are haunting. These are like my ancestors. These are like spirits. These scare me a bit. So when people like this, or like your son, or whoever, nephew, see the pictures and you have this response, this is always the most gratifying. It's more gratifying, actually, than somebody's director or this or that. Because you know it's the truth. As you know it's the truth. Because when somebody, they don't even know it's a photograph. They don't know what they're looking at. So it's like they feel like the pictures are like haunting them. So then you know you're doing something positive. And well, a lot of people say a lot of people who are interested in art or not Western people, they always say to me, these pictures are making me anxious, or they're making me scared. They're dark. So they say it in a very defensive way, in a way, sometimes. So I always say, I have to tell you something. This is really the medicine you need.
I'm going to translate for friends. Que habla de fotos de repente cuando pasan los aeropuertos y meten en las cajas de metal y las hacen abrir la caja. La gente se encuentra así, gente que trabaja en el aeropuerto, cualquiera, y se encuentra con sus fotos así como, una reacción espontánea sin saber quién es, ni siquiera quién es la foto. Entonces esas reacciones sinceras, digamos, de la gente le interesa más que el gran super director. Y después hablo de... ¿Qué dice después?
De la medicina.
Cuando la gente siente afectada como físicamente.
Claro, la de los animales sobre todo. Hay gente que la encuentra como oscura y le dice, como casi a la defensiva, le dice, son muy oscuras, me dan miedo, así como que se sienten afectadas por la foto, entonces le dice, esta es tu medicina.
So somebody like to ask some
About
the animals.
The animals, why the use
Why
of the
work.
animals, how, yeah. Los animales, porque usan
Because you work with some animals, not with all, like, ¿cómo se dice? Doméstico,
More domestic.
domestic.
Yeah, because you see, the thing is first of all, I've been interested in animals for most of my career, and secondly, my photographs are basically psychological statements. They're psychological statements. So, and so, it's always interested me to find the link between the animal psyche and the human psyche. Where do they differ, and where do they come together? So, in my photographs, it seems like this in the spaces that I'm working in, like the animals in a way, are inseparable from the people in these spaces in some psychological way, which has always been interesting for me. And I think the other point, because I made one point here, I'm trying to link or find links between the animal psyche and the human psyche. The other thing that one might comment on is the position of the animals in these photographs. Like, I think the relationship between the human being and the nature is an awful relationship. There's nothing positive about it, except for domesticated dogs and cats who live in very good neighborhoods in the world. Other than, and maybe goldfish. But this relationship is very poor. It's awful. So the relations. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just to update.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep talking, and I'm sorry.
Sus fotos con animales son como manifestaciones de algo psicológico, más bien. Por eso me interesa el animal. Y son animales banales, genéricos. Entonces dice que en realidad, desde su punto de vista, la relación del hombre con la naturaleza es un desastre. Que no hay nada bueno ahí, excepto hace una broma, excepto por los perros y gatos domésticos que están en casa y en barrios bonitos, y tal vez los pescaditos, los pescados dorados, pero el resto es una catástrofe. Donde está relacionado con la naturaleza.
So, I think something. So, if you look at the pictures of the animals in these spaces, it's sort of it's surreal, it's dreamlike, but it's not harmonious at all. There's nothing harmonious in these pictures, and that's why a lot of people find them disturbing, because they create a world of incoherency, of chaos. There's a world of the pictures sort of define a world where order is broken down. Animals live like human beings live like animals. There's no, doesn't seem to be any purpose to these places, that in the sense that chaos dominates every part of these images, and the images that appear in these pictures are very archetypal, especially in the drawings, so that they're images ultimately that come from the people's inner minds can identify with. And since most people tend to repress things from their deeper subconscious, they threaten people's sense of order.
Claro, que estas fotos tienen, no están hechas para provocar armonía, no tienen una visión armónica ni bonita entre el animal, la persona y el mundo. La representación que está dando es algo fuera de una armonía y más bien oscura, que le rompe a la persona sabiendo que está delante todos los esquemas de orden y de lo bonito, digamos. Entonces, eso puede ser el conflicto que estas personas encuentran. I don't think everybody feels threatened, or a lot of people feel attracted to this also.
Look, there are many people, many people who feel very inspired, very liberated, very involved. And that, you know, the thing is, if you remember the pictures, whether you're threatened or inspired, that's the most important thing about the work, because the pictures have an ability to find themselves into people's subconscious minds. And this has always been important to me, that create images that go beyond any political, any social, any current conditions in the world, and are aimed at the archetypal mind, which is like billions of years old. The brain is like a function of a couple billion years of evolution. So we don't know how the brain works. The brain's made up of trillions of cells. How do they work? Well, I have zero understanding. Nobody understands consciousness. So, but if the pictures can somehow or another find their way into the brain, and the brain remembers these pictures, and these pictures have an impact on the inner mind of people, on the subconscious mind, and then as an artist, I've achieved a lot. Because my favorite saying these days, with no criticism towards anybody, is most photographic shows that I see, well, I might as well have just looked at Time magazine. Because I know everything already. I know about this, I know about that. It doesn't touch my subconscious mind. For me, the purpose of art, just for me, I'm talking, is to influence the subconscious mind. If you influence the subconscious mind, then you influence the personality. It's a Freudian concept.
Él defiende, o le interesa particularmente como que la imagen, lo que el arte en general apunte a influenciar el subconsciente, más que otra cosa, mostrar algo que puede conectarte o no, pero que te va a quedar en el fondo del cerebro de una forma permanente, digamos, que a lo mejor te va a perturbar o no. Y en ese sentido dice que él ha logrado cosas, su trabajo no te deja indiferente, o sea, la indiferencia vendría siendo como el fracaso, y tiene muchas exposiciones que él ve, sin criticar a nadie en particular, dice que podría mirar una revista Life y dar lo mismo, las cosas pasan, me imagino, en el periódico.
También, bueno, no sé si ustedes saben que él estudió psicología en Berkeley y después viajó 5 años y después hizo un doctorado en minería y se especializó en geología. So I explained as your study. Yeah, I am first, I ask, when you say that your work is in art minimalistic, but your work have a lot of objects and like a Baroque art. You say that it's minimal where you work with minimal resource, for example, because you work like in an atelier or with people outside the society. Bueno, le hice una pregunta que él dice que su trabajo es minimalista, entonces le pregunto si eso está relacionado con el uso de los recursos que él tiene, por ejemplo, o sea, como él trabaja mucho como que va a la feria de las pulgas y usa cosas reutilizables. Entonces que su imagen igual es barroca.
Look, the issue of minimalism, you can take it to different levels. First of all, I work in black and white, which is a very minimalistic media. It's very reduced. It's taking a world of color and reducing into a more basic language, which is black and white. So the media itself is minimalistic. And so you're right in saying that in some of the pictures there are a lot of drawings, there are a lot of objects, there are a lot of animals. And so I would only say that my goal in the pictures is to make sure that everything has a purified meaning to it. And it doesn't mean if there's a lot of things in the picture that it's not minimalistic. I mean, you can have a few things in a poor picture and it doesn't necessarily mean it is minimalistic. So I think when I refer to minimalistic, I'm meaning that everything has a very particular meaning within the whole of the picture. And if you remove one of these objects or one of these elements in the picture, you don't have a picture anymore. Everything's there for a particular reason. If you look at a, sorry.
Que él habla de esto, del concepto de minimalista, lo que le preguntaba a la Montserrat, que en realidad el minimalismo al que se refiere él es ya el medio blanco y negro, que es reducir el color al blanco y negro, eso ya hay un gesto de minimalismo, digamos, un gesto de su decisión de fotografiar en blanco y negro, y luego puede ser no solamente de poner pocas cosas, sino simplemente que cada cosa esté en la foto, elemento, objeto o lo que sea, con una función específica que tú lo sacas y lo va a cambiar todo, o se va a caer la foto, digamos. entonces que tiene un significado. En ese sentido, eso es lo que quiere precisar como minimalismo, que cada cosa tiene su función.
If you're finished with
No, it's fine.
response,
Absolutely fine.
I had a question going back on previously that you said your work is more engaged with the kind of image in the mind and not so much with contemporary politics and so on. And yet, I think that portraiture and also what you're looking at is a very kind of specific part of society, and there's a lot of misery in the works. And I wanted to ask, like, in the context, showing this in South Africa and outside, like the difference based on, you know, showing it within a society that really has an understanding of the context, and then outside.
Well, first of all, look, my career has been going since the 60s. So there was a period in my career where the pictures were more documentary. So if you look at the 80s and 90s, one could say that some of the people I photographed could be seen as impoverished or struggling to survive or being an outsider. But if you look at the work for the last, say, 15, 20 years, you're not able to judge anything about their social predicament, and in a way I would say that if I had when I did the Outland project in the 90s, people said, well, what was your inspiration, or who inspired you to do this? And I said Beckett. So if you look at a Beckett play, for example, you don't say, oh, well, this person seems like an impoverished Irishman. You look at these people and you say there's something in their condition that seems to represent everybody's condition. So, for example, during the Outland project, which began in '95, I started to see myself more as an artist than just somebody documenting a life around me. And if one goes and looks at this book, you'll very quickly see that it's not very much to do with poverty. It's more to do with human absurdity. And so these are particular actors in Roger Ballen's play, and no different than the actors in Beckett's play, who are acting out some sort of absurd behavior in front of the camera in some complicated, quasi-unknown means. So, yeah, you're right in the sense that in the pictures I took in the 80s, they're seen as political statements about white South Africa, but at this point in my career, when people look at these pictures now, they don't really see them that way anymore. They see them as universal archetypes. These are the better pictures. Now, not all of the pictures people see that way, but, you know, the fact, and this is a very important point, that people, wherever they go, wherever those pictures are shown in the world, those pictures have an impact on those people viewing them, which means that they must go beyond the particular circumstances that they were taken, and they become, you know, like Sondler's pictures or some of the other famous photographers or even painters. They represent a certain part of humanity that the inner mind relates to in some way or another. They become symbols or metaphors for something everybody feels. So I think the pictures I took went way beyond documenting something about South African society. And I've always mentioned, which is an important point, people look at the pictures I took and say, well, these people look a bit poor. But it's actually within the confines of South African society, the people I work with live better than 80% of the population. So they're not actually poor in South African society. So they're not seen as poor. So what you're looking at ultimately in my pictures is the way I transform what's in front of me. And this is where people don't understand photography so well. Because if I was Picasso and I painted pictures that had this element in them, you would say, oh, well, that's Picasso. And in photography, it seems like when you look at a picture, you think, well, it's just a camera doing all the work. The camera's just representing what's there. But this is a complete misnomer. This is as complicated as what Picasso did. It's take thousands of steps, even in the early days, to get to those pictures. So it's a way of seeing the world, transforming the world, and revealing the world. And it's really not very much to do with so-called objectified reality. It's no different than drawing or painting. Because I always say, if anybody, you probably saw the Asylum of the Birds movie in the show. But I would say if you went into that same place with me for the next 100 years, you would never create the same pictures as me. But you would understand that if I was Picasso and you had a pen, and you would understand, or if I was Shakespeare and you were somebody else writing about the place, you would fully understand that you could never do the same poem as me. You would fully understand you could never make the same drawing or painting as me, but you don't understand that about photography. And it's the same. It's the absolute same. This is just a little too easy. It's just a little too easy to take these pictures. That's why people don't understand it. Anybody can do it. But most people can't take a picture that has any impact. They can't.
This is a point.
Sorry, I'm going on and on and
I'm
on.
trying to catch up with everything you said, but en resumen, más o menos. Él habla en el fondo de la contingencia y la trascendencia.
Igual la pregunta de ella,
Perdón, la
que
pregunta
era
sí,
sobre
era,
Sudáfrica,
sí, claro, el
y
contexto
político.
político y social, ¿no?
Sí, porque es como una parte específica del contexto sudafricano y cómo ha influenciado las obras, también en el contexto de enseñarlos afuera del país.
Y además un contexto que en Sudáfrica hay menos blanco y hay más negro. Entonces.
O sea, que hay una tensión racial que
Claro.
el mercado
Y él llegó en los años 70.
Entonces, él, justamente antes de empezar la conversación, estamos hablando de ese tema, que claro, el tema racial, entre comillas, porque en realidad la única raza que yo conozco es la raza humana. Entonces, él habla de cómo la foto documental, que no es lo que él hace, a pesar de que él documenta personajes y momentos, no es una foto documental como lo que se entiende quizá en la prensa, etcétera, sino que él tiene como más la actitud de justamente no es la contingencia que le interesa, está persiguiendo más una visión de la trascendencia de lo que está pasando delante de él. Entonces este resumen, me imagino, de imágenes que él hace, que decide fotografiar, cómo articula su trabajo, tiene que ver con la trascendencia de un momento, y de una cosa de arquetipo humano, que va más allá de una cosa social o histórica solamente, ¿no? O sea, que sería más lo documental. Él quiere ir como más al arte de la fotografía, apuntar más a lo que es lo trascendente, no solamente, claro, y habla del aparato de la fotografía que sea ahora con un teléfono, todo el mundo fotógrafo, entonces como que se ha banalizado la fotografía y la gente puede creer que es demasiado fácil, que un Picasso, claro, tiene los instrumentos, las herramientas para hacer algo grande. El fotógrafo también depende como la mirada del artista, él habla de la mirada, cómo esa mirada está articulada.
Maybe you can talk about photography and art. What do you think about? Because we have all the time the discussion that the photography is not in the art space or art contemporary, and especially in Chile we have a lot of discussion about this point.
But see, this has been going on for like 100 years now.
Yes, I know, but
The thing is, no, but she's bringing up a good point. It's just like, unfortunately, human beings don't seem to get it. I'm using a word in an expression. They don't get it. It doesn't.
Que no captan, la persona no está captando. They don't get what?
Well, this is what I'm trying to say now. So what is art? So we have to first deal with the question of what is art. So the first of all, the word art, generally speaking, is very subjective. It's a very loose term for human. It's a very loose term related to human expression. It's a loose term. It doesn't. At this point in history, the word art tends to belong in the garbage can.
Y en este momento el término arte o la palabra cuando uno habla de arte hoy día es como que se ha banalizado y ya está como la basura. Cualquier cosa puede ser arte y no tiene como mucho sentido, o sea, como se virtúa un poco el sentido de este término.
So ultimately, it doesn't really matter how you do it. It's what you do actually. It doesn't matter if you used a pencil, if you used this, or whether you used a camera, or whether you used a film camera, or whether you used a paintbrush, or used a sculpture. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the product. So the issue is that a work of art? Is that a work of art?
Or like this.
Is this, if I take a picture of this and call myself an artist, and he doesn't call himself an artist, and I take a picture of this, why is this a better work of art than that? Because I'm calling myself an artist. So, or if I paint this and make a painting of this, and because I'm a painter, I'm an artist, and if I take a photograph of it, it's not an artwork. So, it doesn't. The whole idea doesn't make any sense. It's an idea that shouldn't be discussed anymore. It's a meaningless concept.
Claro, el término arte, o sea, cómo uno llega a una obra de arte, como que a esta altura no tiene mucho sentido de cómo llega uno a crear esto. O sea, yo puse una foto de esto, un dibujo, ¿es arte o no es arte? Entonces, no sé si eso es arte, y una pintura de esto, un dibujo de arte. Depende de cómo se haga, y los medios poco importan, digamos. Cámara, lápiz, video, etc. A estas alturas del partido.
So, what makes a work? Ultimately, what makes? How do you define a work of art? Why is this picture a work of art and that picture not a work of art? Well, this is not. It's not always an easy answer to this. It's really not an easy answer. First, and ultimately, time is the best judge, I guess. Pictures that last for some time, a long time, and continually have an impact on people might be considered ultimately works of art, and works that are stronger works of art or more relevant works of art, and other works that don't. Well, maybe they're not such good works of art. But what distinguishes a work of art from, say, something that's documentary or frivolous, or for Facebook, or this or that? Why is something a work of art?
Él dice que la cuestión es complicada y tramposa, o sea, es difícil dar una respuesta, pero seguramente el tiempo es lo que el juez, digamos, es o no una obra de arte, finalmente.
Yeah, I must. All I can say is. I mentioned the aspect that time plays a role in determining what's a great work of art and not a great work of art. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the way you look at it, there's a great deal of subjectivity involved in this. And you see this in the art market. You see this in the art business. You see this everywhere. People like this, people think this is important, and then you look at it, oh, you can't find anything in it. Why does Basquiat sell for 100? Why did the most interesting thing that's happened in the last month or two is the Basquiat painting that went for $110 million. When it was originally sold, it was sold for $5,000. Went from $5,000 to $110 million. What drives this? Why is that? For $110 million, you could probably build 3 or 4 big museums in Santiago.
We don't have this money.
What drives somebody to spend $110 million for something like this? Is this a piece? Is this one of the greatest works of art in the history of art? It may be more valuable than a Michelangelo. I don't know.
Dice que la subjetividad de obra en el arte, para bien o para mal, produce también una variedad de reacciones y de artistas y de productos. Entonces, por ejemplo, el hecho que una pintura de Basquiat se vendió que originalmente fue comprada en $5.000, se vende, se subasta en 110 millones de dólares. Entonces, no sabemos, es que es mejor que un Miguel Ángel. La respuesta es como subjetiva todavía, entonces no sabemos, solo el tiempo te va a guiar y a decir y explicar cómo se desarrolla esto del valor del arte, digamos, y de cómo el arte está apreciado.
You're never going to get to the answer to this question, unfortunately.
Do you like more coffee?
Okay, maybe, thanks. That's it.
Dice que nunca hay una respuesta, dice que la respuesta es imposible.
Here we go. Thank you very much. To the meeting. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Tibio, espérate, ¿algo más, Claudia? Ya, pero Cristóbal, pregunten por Cata, pero es ahora que están acá.
You said earlier that you started at some point feeling or seeing yourself as an artist. Was a long process or?
I started to see myself an artist.
Yo le pregunté que él dijo hace un momento que él en un punto de su carrera se empezó a ver a sí mismo como un artista, como a definir. Entonces le pregunté si había sido como un punto exacto o un proceso largo.
This is a good question. See, going back to the issue of art and photography, up to the mid-90s, which is not that long ago, 20 years ago, very few, almost no photographer called themselves an artist. They just didn't call themselves an artist. It wasn't in the vocabulary. They may have produced art, but they didn't see themselves as an artist. And there were many great photographer artists in the coming in the 1920s and the 1930s, but they never they didn't see themselves as artists. They saw themselves as photographers. Artists were for painters, but painters was an artist, sculptors an artist, but it didn't mean, and this is very important, it didn't mean that you didn't produce a work of art. You didn't call yourself an artist, but it didn't mean that you didn't produce works of art. I think this is where the confusion is.
Él dice que hasta hace unos 20 años apenas los fotógrafos no se llamaban o no se consideraban a sí mismos o no se percibían como artistas. Eso era para el pintor, el escultor. Entonces, a pesar de que muchos producían obras de arte con una calidad trascendente, pues. Entonces, esto es nuevo, porque lo que le pregunta a ella es cuando él se empezó a sentir
So beginning in the mid-90s, photographers started to call themselves artists. And this actually happened to me too during the Outland period. So about 96, 97, I started to interact with the subjects, and you can see it in the Outland book. That all of a sudden it became some sort of theater going on, interactive theater between me and the subjects, whereas before the pictures had more of a documentary aspect to it. And so I became a photographer, artist, director, theater director in what I was doing, and I felt that I was doing something quite different. I was directly transforming the reality in front of me, whereas before, in a way, I was not completely, but before I was just capturing it, and now I was beginning to transform it. And I think that's where the difference was for me between calling myself a photographer and an artist. And I started to take things to another zone consciously, whereas before I didn't necessarily do it so consciously. I just did it.
Claro, cuando en ese momento, como en el medio de los 90, en el libro Outland,
Outland.
En ese proyecto él empieza a como hacer puestas en escena, empieza a interactuar con los personajes, digamos, con la gente que está en sus fotos, que elige para que estén ahí, y se empieza como a permear de otra forma de trabajar. Entonces como director de teatro, un poco como que dirige y maneja cosas de una forma distinta, y es ahí donde él empieza a girar un poco, a cambiar su su forma de trabajar, quiere percibirse a sí mismo y su trabajo.
I know she said you are mining engineer or you study mining.
Geologist, you know.
I'm very happy because we too. And so I know South Africa is, the mining industry is very important. In the last year there was so many conflicts, so illegal mining also is a big issue.
You're right.
So have you any word about this topic?
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that somebody talked about my other career. This is a lot easier.
Yeah. Here
Just for example, you know, so I was an exploration geologist in Africa. I had my own business for 25 years. So, well, there are a few very important points that come out of this. The first one, just to see the difference between art and geology, or art and science. So we're talking about the subjectivity of a photograph. Whereas when you drill a hole like this, then you send it to lab, 1% gold, 2% copper, 3% this, 5% that. It's simple. That's what it is.
Como geólogo, todo es muy, no hay subjetividad, todo es muy preciso. Cuando se forran los suelos.
Se hace una perforación, claro, tú sacas un soldaje, tienes ciencia y sabes precisamente esto tiene 3% de cobre, 1% de oro.
En Sudáfrica.
O sea, la escribió
No.
But there's no word about this topic.
Sí.
But you didn't work with
That I didn't bring it up.
Sí, no.
Yeah, but see, the thing is that's why I was going to bring the other issues about this job. See, I have a PhD in geology, and I did this parallel to my photography for 25 years. So I always tell people, and when I teach it, sometimes I go to the university, and maybe the students tomorrow, I always say the same thing, and the professor sort of sits there, don't say that again, Roger. But I always say though, I say, if you want to be an artist photographer, to the students, you need another profession. Because you can't survive in this thing. And in countries like this, or South Africa, you can't survive. You won't sell the pictures. You won't be able to live.
Yeah.
So the thing is this was very important to me, this other career, because I supported myself for 25 years and I did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I never do any commercial photography. I always do what Roger wants to do. And I never changed my viewpoint. So this was...
You was teaching?
No, I had worked in exploration.
Okay.
I went into Congo. I spent a lot of time in Congo and West Africa,
Okay.
looking for gold, diamonds, this sort of thing. Trying to find the stuff in the ground, you know, and then evaluating it, and then selling it to somebody. So,
Trabajó 25 años paralelamente y eso le permitió ganar su día y dedicarse a la fotografía. Durante 25 años nunca lo hizo en forma comercial.
Claro, no había concesiones que hacer porque se ganaba su vida y por todos lados.
Claro, el Congo, buscando diamantes.
It's finished.
I don't do this very much anymore, but I think the very important thing was, I always say it, you know, I really loved that job. I really liked the job. And it was like inspiring to me because I was working in nature and I was dealing with the earth and the history of the earth. And so it wasn't like working in a bank or an insurance company or in property development. I was working with the planet, the earth. So like I was, so my inspiration, people say, well, what is your inspiration, Roger? Well, I say generally two things. One, my own photographs, because if I'm not inspired by what I do, I have to quit. I have to be inspired by what I'm doing because that leads to wanting to do more. And the other thing is I've always been inspired by nature. So those are my two inspirations in life.
La naturaleza es lo que lo mueve, lo inspira. Y por eso le gustaba tanto ese trabajo, porque está trabajando en plena naturaleza. She had a question.
En castellano.
Sí, es la pregunta castellana, entonces.
Parece que lo respondió.
Pero pregúntale a quizás.
¿Cómo llega?
Quería preguntar cómo llega a la fotografía, si después de la geología, por qué lo dejó.
No, pero ¿cómo llega en primer lugar? Mientras era geólogo.
How you come to the photography?
How?
Because your mother worked.
My mother worked in Magnum
Su mamá trabajaba en la agencia Magnum.
in the 60s, 1960s, and started one of the first photo galleries in America in the 60s with Cortez.
She opened this gallery.
And Martin Cartier-Bresson, Cortez, Elliot Erwitt, we had one of the first photo galleries in the 1960s. So these people would come to my house and give my mother books and photos, and my mother was passionate about this business, about photography. So it wore off on me as a young boy. Unfortunately, she died in 1973. But I was already passionate. By the time I was 18, I was passionate. I was focused on photography. I was obsessed by it in 1968 already. And it came from my mother.
Es su mamá que tenía abrió la primera galería con Cortés, Enriqueces y
You meet Bresson, Cortés, and a lot of...
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that's the influence in your work, in black and white, or...?
Because everybody did black and white then, nobody was doing color.
But you changed in the 80s more to fiction, photography. Sí. Ella abrió una... Murió... Claro.
En el año 73 murió, pero él ya tenía el bichito.
Él tuvo su primera cámara a los 13 años. Your first camera photo, I read...
My first camera was a Kodak Brownie at 5 years old.
And about your film work, you started with film or already with other media like video?
I did my first film in 1972.
In 8mm or?
In Berkeley, California. I did a film on like a Beckett type of character. So when people say, where did this, by age 22 I was interested in outsiders in a way. I made the first film about some sort of Beckett outsider person. So it was already in my head. It I didn't find those people necessarily in South Africa. I'd already found them in their late 60s. It appealed to me for some reason.
Le pregunté por el film, cómo empezó. Que hizo su primer film en 1972, en el 72 en California. Y ahí ya encontró personas de outsiders que no necesariamente los encontró recién en Sudáfrica, sino que ya en California, en Estados Unidos, y ahí empezó a hacer el film.
Well, so the thing is now my work is.
¿Qué Cristóbal? Que tú pensaste que había llegado por otras razones a Sudáfrica. Tú, es que él, claro, llegó por la geología.
Por geología,
sí.
You arrived in South Africa because of the job?
No, I was a young man, restless, disliking what was going on in America. I was like, my college was at Berkeley, California, which is the center of the counterculture in the late 60s, early 70s. So I was running away from Western culture. And I did a 5-year trip. I came South Africa. I crossed Africa by land, Cairo to Cape Town in 9 months, and then I spent a bit of time there. And then I made a trip from Istanbul to New Guinea by land, and then I made a trip across America and some of Central America. So I traveled for 5 years almost without stopping. And then I did my first photo book, which was called Boyhood. Yeah. So this was a very, people always asked you, they asked you yesterday, some woman from Spain said, well, what's your favorite photograph? I said, I can't really answer that. What's your most intense experience of photography? I can't really answer that. I don't really know, you know? But I do know that this trip I made for 5 years around the world by myself with no money, almost no money. There was no. It's a different world. The phones didn't work. You know, they were like South Africa in 1973. There were 16 million people, 1/6. Now there's 60 million, and nearly everybody has this. Yeah. So it was a different experience than that you would have now. And you know, this trip really, if you're by yourself traveling like that, you come to terms of. I came to terms with a lot of things about what I thought of human beings, how human behavior is structured. I got to understand the planet well because I traveled by land. And I did my first photo book because I worked for 5 years on this project with no feedback. And so after I finished this trip, I really subconsciously and consciously understood a lot. I think more than most other people at 27 or 28.
Para responder a la pregunta de cómo llegó a Sudáfrica, en ese momento, cuando él empieza un viaje a fines de los 60, él era alumno en Berkeley, que era una de las universidades más estatales, más activas en el momento de la guerra de Vietnam y todo eso. Entonces él estaba como apestado con el mundo en Estados Unidos, o sea, con lo que estaba pasando, y parte en un viaje de 5 años a África, por tierra, o sea, llega, me imagino, en avión, pero por tierra toda África, América Central, a través de Estados Unidos, y eso le dio un entendimiento mucho más importante y fue como fundador en su periplo, digamos. Trabajó en un libro, su primer libro de fotos, lo trabajó, terminó el proyecto al final de este viaje, entonces como que la experiencia quizás fundadora para él ha sido estos 5 años de viaje joven.
So, you know, the thing is, I keep finding new things in what I'm doing and getting involved in other media. So, for example, I'm making videos now. I'm making installations. You know, when I have exhibitions, I tend to make, as we saw in Arles, I tend to make rooms or houses that feel like Roger Ballen spaces. So I'm doing also etching now. People are quite impressed. I didn't think I had any talent in that field with what I'm doing. So this is what's interesting to me. I keep finding new avenues and new places to express myself, and this is what's very gratifying. You know, I'm 67 now, and I'm working harder than ever, and I'm finding new things all the time. And that's what you have to do as an art. For me, that's what's crucial as an artist. It's about finding parts of yourself, discovering new parts of yourself all the time. I don't need to know, personally, my personal opinion, Roger Ballen doesn't need to know much more about society. He's seen enough of society. You know, he knows how societies behave. So Roger Ballen's interested in how Roger Ballen's mind is Roger Ballen's interested in understanding Roger Ballen's mind.
Porque él dice que a esta altura de la vida ya ha visto tanto, ha viajado tanto, ya no necesita o no le interesa personalmente ir a ver cómo se comporta la gente o los comportamientos de los otros, ya como que entendió la película un poco, y lo que a él le interesa es como ir en su cabeza y empezar a descubrirse él, y que a su edad, a los 67 años, un artista como él está trabajando más duro que nunca, buscando todos sus lugares, cosas nuevas, descubriendo, está haciendo grabados, haciendo cosas en distintos medios, y él ahí se realiza y descubre cosas y trabaja, digamos, más que antes, incluso cuando era joven. Es lo que dice que es fundamental para el artista, siempre buscando más allá, desafíos, me imagino.
Ask me about the last time about your work, that you say that your work is not political work.
Yeah, well, this
it's more kind of type human type or...
No, but the way it is, I don't know if you, did anybody, because I don't know anybody's my age here, but there was an important American psychologist, psychiatrist in the 60s called R.D. Laing. Did anybody hear of R.D. Laing? R.D. Laing, L-A-I-N-G. And he wrote a couple books. Most importantly was something called The Divided Self. And I think that then another book was The Politics, I can't remember, it's The Politics of the Self, or something like this. So, yeah, my works are political in one way, which is the most important way. And it's the reason why there's no progress on the planet. It's obvious there can't be there can be no progress in my personal opinion. Everything I say is in my opinion, but I don't care anymore. Actually, I'm not caring because I made my mind up now. The only way you can have any progress on the planet is the mind the repressed part of the mind has to talk to the other part of the mind. The mind has to become a unity. The mind has to be able to understand itself and be able to come to terms with who it is, who it is. And so if it doesn't work this way, we get anger, we get hostility. You know, it's basic stuff. If the mind is repressed and angry, I'm sorry, I'm not explaining myself so well, but for me, the purpose of my work is to help people, including myself, integrate their own minds, to get one part of the mind aware of the other part of the mind, which has become aware of the other part of the mind. And so if the mind is more holistic, then it's likely to act in a more harmonious way. Does this make sense?
Él está muy enfocado en ayudar para él mismo, en lo personal, pero ella dice que ya no es solo personal, o sea,
una mirada más holística.
Claro, en que él mismo integre todas las partes de su mente que puedan entenderse, comprenderse y armonizarse, y ojalá que la gente pueda también acceder a eso, porque el problema hoy día es que justamente la mente de las personas, digamos, el humano está como muy quebrado, muy separado.
Que le pregunté por qué él consideraba que su trabajo no era político.
Claro.
Bueno, igual trabaja con un sector marginal.
Pero él dice que, claro, que la forma política
claro.
Es como, para él es político eso.
Sí, no, claro, para mí sí, for me es política. O sea, obviamente no estamos hablando de la política de los estados ni del gobierno, sino como una política de la humanidad. So, human politics maybe it's more.
Como más la parte trascendente de lo que podemos llamar política, no lo que está pasando con el candidato, no sé qué. No, es algo mucho más allá.
Well, you have to. It's clear to me at this point in my life that it's about individuals reconciling themselves somehow or another. And if my art can make some contribution to this, then it's made a positive political contribution. Because if people are harmonious and reconciled, they're more likely to contribute to a better situation on the planet. But this is very idealistic thinking, extremely idealistic thinking. And so, you know, I don't think art is the answer. I don't know what the real answer is to any of the problems.
Claro,
tell you the truth.
No tiene la respuesta, pero dice que sí puede hacer una contribución a que la gente pueda armonizarse y buscar más armonía en la relación con sí mismo y entre las personas para aportar a la sociedad. Claro, puede ser muy ideal, pero es lo que él, en el fondo, apunta a eso su trabajo. Entonces, está mucho la cosa mental y cómo estas mentes pueden ir conciliándose entre la misma mente, sus partes, y entre las personas, eventualmente, aunque suene idealista.
So, well, I guess the answer to the question is you have to you have to find your own way to get some sort of harmony or reconciliation, or you have to make peace with yourself in some way before in a way you're suited to become a sort of a social tool. I mean, I don't know if this makes sense, but there are too many people thinking they're making individual judgments when they're just a tool of another force.
So, if I
Well, for example, the young people, for now, I mean, they feel that they're liberated because they can use Facebook, but they're a tool of Facebook.
Activists, Facebook.
Que él habla un poco de la liberación y de que cada persona pueda llegar a convertirse en su propia herramienta, no ser una herramienta de otra parte del sistema. Por ejemplo, los jóvenes que están usando Facebook, que creen que se liberan porque están en Facebook, es falso, ¿no? Una vivencia en realidad falsa, que ser su propia herramienta y desarrollar su propia armonía, digamos, y autonomía, me imagino, porque de eso habla.
So, because I don't want to get away from photography here, because we'll never solve political problems.
But it's social management, I think, a lot of.
But the thing is we getting to where photography is becoming such a huge field.
Mm-hmm.
It's so diverse, and there's so billions of pictures taken every week. So in a way, what's important, if you're interested in photography, you have to come to some sort of resolution about what's important to you, what's important in photography, to be able to make sense of all this. Because it's very hard to make sense of photography anymore.
Pero que hoy día la fotografía es tan vasta, el campo de la fotografía es como muy masivo. Se producen imágenes, billones de imágenes alrededor del mundo, entonces que si uno se interesa en fotografía, que tiene que realmente, como artista o fotógrafo, tiene que decidir qué es lo que realmente quiere decir y cómo lo quiere decir, y qué es lo que le interesa en esta como bosque de multitud de imágenes, porque ahora son todos fotógrafos.
It's almost impossible.
No, que no hay respuesta, en el fondo él dice que él da su opinión en todo esto, arte, fotografía, qué sé yo, pero maybe what you're saying, it's inspiring and it's a good, very deep thoughts about the base of the roots of how you become honest and sincere and with your work for photographers here, even for artists in general.
No, you're right. But everybody thinks they're doing the right thing, so this is where you. So I don't know. It's a very, very difficult. But I think if you have to find your own way and try to believe in what you're doing and continue with it. And I think the one thing that I'm proud of after all these years, and I'm having it's coming out next month. It's like a 350-page book on my career, and it's called Ballenesque. And it's a beautiful book. I've seen it already. It's a beautiful book, and I'm sort of proud of myself that I continued this for 50 years now. I did it. I didn't give up, and I took it to continue to create, and I could continue to find zones that expand my vision and challenge other people. So, well, I think this is. But I think this is really an important thing that I did, because it wasn't easy, and I stuck with it. And unfortunately in this business, that's why I went back to what he said about geology. Most artists, and I'm sure you appreciate it living in Chile, because I appreciate it living in South Africa. It's like an athlete. So at age 20, everybody's strong, There are 100 good athletes and 100 people who want to become photographers, artists. By 25, there's maybe 40 or 50 left. By 30, there's maybe 20 left. By 35, there's maybe 10 left. By 40, there's maybe 5 left or 3 left. At my age, there's maybe 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. So everybody just gives up because they can't survive in this business. And the key thing is if you really want to make a statement, unless you're lucky, like somebody, and Basquiat died at 27, but it's because there's so much of this out here. It's in photography and painting. There's so much art now coming out there that in the end of the day, if you really are to make a statement, it takes years and years and years to develop the statement and time to get it out there, and you have to work hard and be committed to what you're doing. And I think this really is crucial. I mean, it's really crucial if you believe in what you're doing, you have to, and it's very difficult to find this path because you have to have another career, basically. That's what I was saying.
Claro, lo que dice también para el fotógrafo y artista que, bueno, él está satisfecho, va a sacar el próximo año un libro compilatorio. ¿Ya está listo?
Sí.
Sale este año.
Claro, dijo que you've seen the book already.
Que sale ahora.
It's 5 kilograms, that's why I didn't bring it. I can do my exercises.
Que pesa una tonelada. Que es un libro compilatorio de su carrera, son 50 años de trabajo. Entonces como que hay un gran logro porque resume todo este esfuerzo que él creyó y tuvo fe, y que es lo que le dice a la gente que quiere seguir, porque empiezan mucho en la carrera y después ya son muy pocos los que llegan al final, digamos, que abandonan porque es difícil, porque hay que sobrevivir, porque no tiene la fe suficiente, o la suerte, o el talento, no sé, son muchas como variantes. Entonces él recomienda nada, que hay que ser obstinado y decidido y tener mucha fe.
Ojalá otra carrera.
Claro, otra carrera es posible.
To survive.
Yeah, that I was saying that he says to be able to make it and to develop your work as a photographer, if you have another career on the side, as you did, that may help to get, to get over the difficulties.
See, everybody has to find their own balance.
Yeah.
So some people who have another job and become so frustrated they couldn't do their art, or they have to work every day of the week and then spend the weekend with their children or family, and then they have no time. And other people may love the job so much that they decide not to do the photography anymore. So there's no the balance. You have to find your own balance, and what's the balance one year may not be the balance the next year. So you have to have the commitment and passion and love of what you're doing to continue with it. Otherwise, it's like everything else. It doesn't happen. You know, even in geology or something, you have to feel a passion about what you're doing. And whatever job it is, even if you're selling donuts or whatever, you know, if you don't feel something about what you're doing, you won't do a good job. And so I think this is really crucial. And what's happened is, in this business, is that anybody can do this now. Anybody. And they do it all day and night. All over the world, people are taking pictures day and night. And it's going into the system. And there's so much of this going into the system that it's very, very difficult in this period in photography history for something to rise above it, because there's just so much.
Claro, para sobresalir hoy día es muy difícil, porque un fotógrafo tiene que mantener su compromiso, sus ganas, su pasión, como para cualquier pega, digamos. Pero que acá están sumergidos fotógrafos de cantidad de imágenes monstruosas, porque es demasiado. Si va a sobresalir, hay que ser obstinado, hay que tener fe y trabajar mucho.
Maybe I read in your homepage that you have this new Centro for Contemporary Art in South Africa and Johannesburg.
Cape Town.
It's the first. Can you tell me more about this project? Because you have this foundation, Roger Ballen. Ustedes saben que también tienen una fundación, se llama Roger Ballen, y él este año apoyó como el centro de la apertura de un centro de arte contemporáneo en Johannesburg. Entonces yo estoy preguntando un poco cómo fue eso y como la importancia también de tener un centro de arte contemporáneo en Johannesburg.
¿Dedicado a la fotografía?
No, it's not only for photography.
No, they have it in Cape Town. It's not Johannesburg, Cape Town.
In Cape Town.
They have next month, in the 17th of September, they're opening the biggest contemporary art museum in Africa. It's called the Museum of Contemporary Art Africa in Cape Town.
This is your initiative?
No.
Okay.
In the Center for Photography,
okay.
there it's called the Center, Roger Ballen Foundation Center for Photography is part of the museum.
Okay.
So I've created a Center for Photography in the museum, and the purpose is to exhibit, expand, educate people about photography in Africa. And so the foundation is opening up its space in the museum, and the museum is opening in the middle of September.
Now, like,
Yes, no.
It's big. You can look at it on Google or whatever.
Hay un gran museo que se abre, el más grande, the biggest in South Africa.
It's the biggest museum. It's the biggest art museum in Africa.
En todo el continente.
En toda África. Se abre el destacado en septiembre y ahí está la fundación de la fotografía que lleva su nombre y se inaugura ahora en septiembre. Where to go visit.
I wanted to ask you about books, because you mentioned that you made Boyhood, the first book. It was early in your career that you started making books on your own, or you picked an editor?
Yeah, they're all, look, these days a lot of people make books by themselves because you just, for example, there's a place in California, I think it's called, I forgot the name of it, but for $100, $200, you send the files and you can make a book. So there's, again, like photographs, there's a proliferation of books, which is okay, there's nothing wrong with this. But all my books have been with publishers, because if you do it yourself, it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, it's fine, it's great. But the disadvantage of doing it yourself, it's that you get no distribution. So if you work hard for 5 years, most of my projects have taken about 5 years. So you work 5 years and you do it yourself, or maybe you'll sell it to your friends or whatever. But you want to see the books in different bookstores in the world. And you can't do that yourself, you know, it's another business. And so I've always tried to work with publishers. And so now I'm working with Thames and Hudson in England. And before I was working with Phaidon, the publisher. So these are two people who have a lot of experience in art-related publishing. It's much better that way. I think books are the best thing, a really important thing to do in photography. Because, you know, look, shows come and go and they influence people, but, you know, to have the books around, this is like your history of what you did. And I'm sure when Montserrat sends me some newspaper clippings, my Spanish is not so good. So I won't even understand the clippings. So it's not the books are what the books are. I think the books are a really important thing to be involved in. I've always thought so, but that's my generation again. My generation, when we started, you know, the most important thing to do as a photographer was to make a book in the 60s and 70s. That was very important and very, and you received a lot of status for doing this. But it's more difficult now because there's so many books, again, like pictures, there's so many books out there. So in order to get the book out there and to have any chance of people reading it, you probably need a bigger publisher. Otherwise it sits. And it's hard to sell books these days, because the bookstores are going out of business because of Amazon and online publications, and people don't like buying them to the same degree because they go on this and they look at all my pictures on the internet and then don't buy the book, or they don't buy other people's books. So it's never been an easy business, but I think it's certainly not getting easier. It's easier to publish the book by yourself, but it's not easy to sell a lot of photo books.
Que, bueno, como un resumen, que
Even myself.
es muy importante tener libros, porque obviamente las exposiciones son temporales y después desaparece, y aunque genera algún tipo de influencia en la gente, es más importante tener como un libro, y que eso es muy importante para el trabajo del fotógrafo también. Y que, bueno, obviamente también es como difícil generar estos libros. Hoy día lanzamos el libro, no el catálogo de Roger Ballen, porque yo creo que un poco por lo mismo, porque hacer un catálogo no necesariamente significa que llegue a toda la gente, aunque si se hace un libro obviamente implica como algo comercial, que también tienes que comprarlo, pero por lo menos está como una circulación más amplia. Entonces es un poco lo que él hablaba, de que es importante tener un libro.
¿Y hoy presentan el libro?
¿Ah? Hoy día presentamos el libro, sí. En Matucana, sí. Sí, lo que pasa es que se inscribieron, sorry, I speak about it, que abrimos la convocatoria para 550 personas y en 3 horas se llenó, entonces se cerró el mismo
¿Y ese
día.
libro lo van a ¿Dónde se puede?
Se va en LOM.
¿Verdad que no?
Sí, y...
El libro,
Pero es, ¿no?
¿La dimensión tiene más o menos?
Es un libro de tapa dura, más o menos así, y le propusimos a Roger, como no era un catálogo, hacer un libro de obras que a él eligieran, con algunas imágenes obviamente en la exposición, y además él fue muy amable, que puso obras que todavía no están ni siquiera en la página web, como el último trabajo que está haciendo.
Entonces después de ese día se puede conseguir con LOM.
Sí. Sí, y también creo que también lo habíamos hablado que tenía muchos catálogos, ¿no? Entonces como que ya, en cambio yo creo que un libro igual es algo más objetual finalmente, y también hay temas de texto, aunque la gente no lo lea, pero eso fue un poco la apuesta también de tener el libro, exposición de acá en Chile.
¿Tú le puedes preguntar, por favor, si ha estado antes en Latinoamérica, si conoces fotografía latinoamericana y qué te ha llamado la atención de lo que lleva acá?
She asked about it was for the past time in South America, and how many photographers you know from here in South America or Latin America?
I've had quite a few shows in the last few years in South America, a few in Brazil, in Rio, Sao Paulo, Brasilia. I'm having one in Brasilia. I've had a few in Guatemala and many in Mexico, Buenos Aires. So now here in Chile. So I've had a number of shows, and I've met some photographers. I can't say I met a lot, and I liked a lot of the work I saw, but I haven't. To be honest, I had, because I come and go, and then I meet some people, but then it's hard to keep the relationships going. So I've seen interesting work in all the cities I've been in, but I don't know. I think there's good work being done. It's a very good work being done here, but in South America. But I have to be honest. I'm not the world's expert in South American photography. They had a show in Colombia and Arles, and I see things all over, but I don't. It's hard for me to remember the name of the person, and I remember the photographs, but I don't know the names of the persons, people so well.
Le he visto muchas cosas buenas, pero no recuerdo con exactitud que se movió. Entonces, por toda Latinoamérica, cuando tiene exposiciones, ha visto cosas buenas, pero no ha retenido, tampoco mantiene la relación, no es un experto de la foto latinoamericana, siempre ha visto cosas interesantes.
Él expuso...
South America is a big place.
Yes.
It's like Africa. I mean, it's like Africa. People always talk about Africa. I said, it's crazy to talk about Africa. Africa is like Libya. It's like, it's Congo, it's Johannesburg.
Algeria.
Yeah, Algeria. There's more, in some places in Africa have more to do with Cape Town is more like California than it is like Kinshasa.
Mm-hmm.
So why try that? It's just crazy to make these general statements about these continents. Egypt has nothing to do with what's going on in the Congo, and what's going on in the Congo doesn't have much to do with what's going on in Namibia. So it's an artificial way of looking at the world. It's very superficial way.
Generalizar sin continentes tan grandes como Latinoamérica o África es muy erróneo. Son preguntas muy generalistas.
Claro, sin poder profundizar mucho. Pero your first big exhibition was in Sao Paulo, right? And
No, in South America, the first big exhibition was probably in Rio.
¿En Río? Sí, su primera gran exposición fue en Río.
They have a Museum of Modern Art there.
El museo después también expuso también en Argentina, el Festival de la Luz, en Guatemala y en México también expuso. Pero claro, igual me parece interesante pensar, porque nosotros hablamos harto de fotografía latinoamericana, pero tampoco no conocemos a profundidad lo que pasa en todos los países.
El Festival de la Luz, 2014, ha sido lo del Festival de la Luz ha sido el 2014. Creo que ahí conoces.
Sí, en la Centro Cultural de Recoleta.
The same problem exists look, I'm not the world's expert on South America. I can't claim I am. I don't really know that much, but you know, it has the same problem that you have as a photographer in Africa. Unfortunately, you know, most of the so-called business, the collector business, making a living out of this is in a few countries in Europe and America. And it's very hard in South America, it's very hard in Africa, in Australia probably, in a lot of Asia, to make a living selling pictures. There's not a big collector market, a big collector. There aren't galleries that specialize in photography, and even if they do, it's still hard to sell the work and to make a living out of it. So generally speaking, if you want to become internationally known in what you're doing, you have to make shows in Europe and perhaps in the United States. And that's what will propel your career to get you to get more collectors to buy your work so you can make more of a living out of it. It's very difficult in countries like this or South Africa or whatever to make a living. It's almost impossible. I always say in South Africa, Picasso would have starved to death. Picasso would have starved. He would have made a living in South Africa. He couldn't make it there.
Dice que el mercado, digamos, de la fotografía para artistas o fotógrafos como es casi muy precario, inexistente en países como los nuestros, incluso en África y en Sudáfrica, que hay una actividad incipiente, pero los grandes coleccionistas están en Europa y en Estados Unidos. El 80% de los coleccionistas están en Estados Unidos. Entonces, claro, que seguramente un fotógrafo, o sea, el mismo Picasso se hubiera muerto de hambre en su época si hubiera estado en Sudáfrica o acá. Entonces, como la estrategia para un fotógrafo que ya quiere tener visibilidad internacional y como entrar en las colecciones es mostrar en Estados Unidos o en Europa. En Estados Unidos sobre todo la fotografía. Sí. I think 80% of collectors are in the States.
And Europe?
Photo. I
Maybe.
think the States has more. Yeah.
Probably. Well, the population of the States is the same as Europe, basically. It's about 300 million people. But, I mean, for example, the best collecting country in the world as a per capita is Belgium.
Bélgica.
El mejor coleccionista, el país que colecciona más per cápita es Bélgica, en proporción.
What about museums?
Yo me
Like museums buy your work and they talk to you, or yo le pregunté de los museos, como si a él lo llamaban de los museos o como, meaning like museums are collecting.
Museum. The problem with the thing is, I told somebody yesterday, I think. Look, it's very important for an artist to be in a museum collection.
Yes.
Very important. But the problem, unfortunately, in the world, and I hate to say this, is very few, maybe 5-10 museums in the world have any money. So we're unfortunately in a business that has no money. I'm sure if you go to the museum here, and I say, do you want to buy?
The museum raining all the time.
No, they don't have any money. Please donate. And in South Africa, please donate. In most museums in America, please donate. Same thing in Europe. We have no money. Give us one, and we'll pay for one. Give us 5. No, I know this. I have so much experience in this.
Dónanos la foto, o sea, que en el fondo ya los museos no están comprando.
There's no. They sometimes they have to get a donor to buy the picture. It's so complicated.
She buy photography, for example.
I work at the library, National Library.
Yeah.
We buy photographs, but in a different, with a
Historical.
different perspective than a museum.
Yeah, for
We
historical.
mostly buy
Historical.
and negatives, for example.
But it's the only and maybe some photo by negative or archive from photographers. So it's important because the other museum don't buy anything.
Well, this is the problem. So even in the museums, and then what they might do is a lot of museums, and it's like collectors, then they buy a painting or something and they'll spend $20 million and then there's nothing left for anything else. It's like in the publishing business too, is this way, is that if Donald Trump wants to write a book, they'll pay him $50 million. And then if somebody else goes there, they say, well, we have no money, we'll just pay you a royalty. But they paid Donald Trump $50 million. So it's the same problems. It's the same problem. But so it's very important to get the work in the museums and the collections, but unfortunately the business is underfunded. Where nearly every institution that I've been involved in. It's a sort of it's the nature of the business. It's not football.
Tiene como el fútbol,
Diríamos.
que es como el problema del negocio de la foto, o sea, del tema de la foto, del arte.
That's why I say the most, I go back to what I said in the beginning. It has to be like a personal passion. And you have to decide why you want to do it and why it's important to you, and you have to do it out of your passion, and that's what's going to keep you going. And at the same time, you should need to find I sell a lot of pictures, but I mean, I'm 67, I've been doing this all my life. But I mean, most people, it's very hard to succeed, it's very hard to sell pictures, it's very hard to keep selling pictures, and it's very hard to get a decent price. Plus, if you work, and you work in a gallery, well then the gallery takes half the money.
Que es muy difícil, dice, está consciente, a pesar de que vende fotos y ha podido seguir vendiendo fotos y creciendo, digamos, es lo que ha hecho desde hace 50 años. Entonces no es, o sea, necesita un fotógrafo, un artista, necesita realmente una pasión personal, una convicción